Here we are, a new guitar. Welcome to Jedi Jingle Maker. Today we're going to look at the Firefly FFST, which I just purchased and have not modified in any way. But this will be modified in many ways moving forward. So please subscribe to the channel. Also leave a comment on this video. Let me know what you think. And also give it a thumbs up if you like it. I found out about Firefly guitars by first seeing them in a number of places around my local area, and pawn shops and music stores and online being sold. And then I started to watch some of the videos about these guitars and I got really curious. I went to this website called Guitars Garden, and which, by the way, I am in no way affiliated with in any way, but Guitar Gardens, where they sell these. And as it turns out, they sell them on Amazon sometimes, but I think that's the reliable place to get them. I can tell you I achieved getting one and everything went very smoothly. So, you know, it's a website where you pay through PayPal, and they do not include shipping on the original prices you see on the channel, but it wasn't that much. I think the shipping for me was $28, and it arrived something like a week later, maybe a little longer. So good experience, but really purchasing it, it arrived in a package that is all styrofoam, much smaller than the packages I typically get when I buy things like these Schechters and so on from online retailers like Sweetwater and Guitar Center. This one came in a completely encapsulated in styrofoam, which I thought was great, and there was no damage in any way to it. In this video, I'm going to dive into the specs of this guitar. We're going to look at it inch by inch, close-up, high resolution. And I'll give you my thoughts. Then I'm going to open it up. I'm actually going to take off these strings. I'm going to take off the pick guard, and we'll look in to see what it looks like on the inside. And then I will have a video to follow which shows modifications to this thing, further modifications. I plan to greatly modify it. That was one of the main reasons I purchased it, was to be able to modify something that had a good foundation. And we'll cover what that foundation is in this video. So I hope you enjoy the video. So here she is. Take a look at some of the details of this guitar from all the way on one end to the other. I'm going to tell you my initial reaction is that I'm very happy with what I got for the $180 I spent in total to get this guitar. I can't believe it in many ways. I will say that it lived up or exceeded every expectation I had for a $180 guitar. I've never purchased a guitar that cost less than $200 since I was maybe 12 years old. My first guitar, I think, was $100. But since then, it's always been much more expensive. And this makes me wonder, was that all a scam, honestly? If you can get this kind of thing for the price that I did. Now, it's not perfect. And by the way, neither are many of the other guitars that I have that are much more expensive, but they're all perfect enough. A guitar is not a exact scientific instrument. It's made of wood. It's going to have some kind of flexing over time. That's why you need to become comfortable with using the truss rod. But this thing is just really amazing. Okay, let's get into the details. First thing is ash body. Ash body. I am a huge fan of using ash wood, swamp ash, what I typically call it, in guitar bodies. I think it has an incredibly resonant quality to it that is hard to achieve in other woods. It's my favorite by far. So the fact that this guitar came with that, it was incredible to me. Now, I'll point out a couple of things. It's made of there's another seam right here. It's made of 3 pieces of ash, which I couldn't care less that it's made of 3 pieces of ash. I just thought I'd mention it. You can clearly see the grain of the wood which is outstanding. You can see through that like almost whitewashed finish, which is exactly what it looked like on the website. So I'm so glad that it showed up looking just like this. And you can feel it. They did not fill the pores, which I really, really like. I love a guitar where you can feel the wood grain, and you really can on this. And you can see it. And it's a tight grain, and I think that's really good. That actually reminds me a lot of some of my favorite playing guitars, like this thing, the Schecter SLS, which has also very tight pattern in the grain. Now that is a, I don't know, $1,400 guitar or something like that. 180 bucks. Not the same guitar. That guitar is better, but let me say that this guitar is close for what it's trying to do. Let's look at the back. Get a good idea what that looks like. The grain really present throughout. Now, another thing about the body of this guitar is the cutaway. Really nice, smooth cutaway. You can get great access to the upper frets. Now, this is when I'll tell you, stay tuned for the third video I'm going to make with this guitar, which is comparing it to the Nick Johnston Schecter right there on the wall. And I'll tell you, it is very close and almost better in some ways, but I'll let you know which one wins in my opinion in that video. But just incredible grain to the wood for such an inexpensive guitar. Now in terms of weight, this is, I would just say, approximately the same weight as that Schecter Nick Johnston. So I'd say about 8 pounds, maybe 8.5 pounds. It's not a super light guitar like maybe the, let's look at it, the Ibanez AZES I have over here, which is a very thin style guitar. But it is a resonant guitar. So, you know, most people, I would assume, including myself, sit down when you play the guitar. I'm mostly sitting when I play. And therefore, the weight of the guitar is not that significant. Yes, if I was going to stand up and play in a performance for multiple hours, this would get really heavy. But so would the Nick Johnston, so would many guitars. Some of my favorite guitars have been slightly heavy. But I think it does something to the tone that's really nice. Another thing I want to point out about this body is the way that the heel comes in. If you see it's slanted in towards your fretting hand where you're touching the fretboard, so that does make a difference. It's probably like a 1/4 inch maybe of dip. I don't know exactly, but it's enough that it makes a difference. And the other thing is that this plate that they use to secure the neck, I always check it with a screwdriver when I get a new guitar, and this one was just totally solid. No give in the screws whatsoever. It was put on there to the perfect tightness. That blew me away. That almost never happens. Usually I have to tighten these screws a little bit on new guitars. Much more expensive guitars, not on this one. Also, I like this plate. It's not super thick. Some of the guitars that I actually like in this genre have rather thick plates, you know, and you can feel that. It's like every little bit counts, but I'm sure this is sufficient in terms of the metal strength, but it's also not that bulky. Just a really nice touch there to give you the access. And while we're on the back, we're going to go in and take a look at all these things with a screwdriver here in a moment, but you can see that it's got that 1-ply white cover on it, plastic cover. Most people end up taking that off anyway. I'm not sure if I will on this one, but most likely I will just take that off to have easy access to the back of the guitar when I need it to put strings in, and also to tighten or loosen the screws depending on the tremolo claw, depending on the gauge of string that I have on here. One other thing related to the body I suppose I should show you is the strap locks. I did have a strap on this earlier, and it is an oversized strap head, so it worked great. This is the kind of strap head that I like. One thing that I thought was weird was that there was no felt washer in between the body and the hardware. That's easily fixed. That's something I will fix just to, preserve it maybe a little bit more. Again. And this close-up of the body, you can see that it's shaped nicely. It's got all the comfort cuts that you would hope it would have to make it very comfortable. It's a very comfortable guitar. Another thing I want to point out is that the place where the neck meets the body is very tight. It's very, very good. Sometimes you can see a little bit of a gap there in guitars, and I don't think that is good. I like it to be nice and precise in that area, and it is, and there's no cracking. Sometimes there can be cracking there. Just everything just seems to be put together tightly, to tight precisions. You can see there's a little tool mark there in the corner. That kind of stuff means nothing to me. But I suppose those are some of the drawbacks you might encounter with a guitar like this, the fit and finish issues perhaps. Okay, let's move on to the bridge. This bridge, it very much looks like a Godot 510 sort of copy, but with some key differences like the saddles and so on, but same idea. This bridge feels so solid. I can't believe there's no creak, it has the right tension I would want, like very much like other tremolos I've played like this that were much more expensive. And you could easily swap this with a Godot 510 or something. I might do that. I don't know, but I like it the way it is. I might just swap the saddles. I mean, why change it if it's great? But right now it won't hold tune well. And I'm going to tell you why that is in a little bit, but I think that's a completely solvable problem. It's just have to make a couple little tweaks. But it will hold tune just fine, I'm sure, with the bone nut. This is a great tremolo to start with. And you can upgrade it. You can intonate easily with these screws. You can change the height of the saddles very easily with these little Allen bolts. And you can also raise and lower the tremolo itself. So just with some tweaking, you can lower and play with the action on this guitar outside of what you might do with the neck, but we'll look at that in a moment. Another thing I wanted to point out was that it has this 3-ply pick guard, which is very nice. I inspected the cut on it all around and it seemed great. Very well done. One thing I usually look at too is to see if it's lined up between the pick guard and the bottom of this bridge, to see if everything kind of squares up. And it really does on this guitar. No problems did I notice, which is great. Also, look for alignment of these saddles to be, right through the neck. Look for spacing on the strings to have more or less a uniform spacing all along the edge of the strings and enough space on either side. So it really passes the sniff test in that area. This tremolo arm, it's interesting. It's hollow at the base. I've never seen that before, but solid enough. Actually, it's kind of maybe a little lighter. It's good that it's hollow. Don't need more weight. And it has an Allen wrench friction point here that you can tighten to keep it held in. It's held in there great. I've used it a little bit, but I mean it holds the tension well. And like I said, the action of the tremolo is really satisfying. I'm so happy about that. This is the standard Fender input jack. The connection to it worked perfectly. Sometimes if they don't position it right, you can have issues there, but it's installed correctly and it works great. No issue. And furthermore, as we get into the electronics just a little bit, no issues with the electronics whatsoever. It was interesting. There was some plastic under these knobs. I can get it off right now, but plastic remaining from the plastic that covers the pick guard under there, and it made a weird sound. I took it off, took the plastic out, no problem. These knobs feel, we'll see what they actually are, but they feel solid. They have a nice uniform friction. They don't just they don't feel cheap at all. This 508 switch feels solid. It really does. There's no give in it. It just very nice. So good impressions superficially on the action of the electronic hardware. I'm going to remove this eventually, but this humbucker with the silver cover, you know, is just so ripe to get fingerprints or anything on it if you touch it. But very nice touch, goes with it very well. And of course the two white single coils. Now I'm going to do a complete pickup replacement on this guitar. That's one of the reasons I got it, was to play with pickups. But if you want to hear what it sounds like, stay to the end of the video and I'll provide a clip of me playing over a backing track so you can get a feel. But really, you know, these pickups will do, they're a little microphonic, meaning they'll pick up like tapping or your voice or whatever if you scream into them. But they typically work pretty well for a clean setting. I've been playing around with them now for the last day or so, and I found them to be fine on a clean setting. They came with the heights of the pickups way down, so I had to bring them up a bit. I'm not sure if they're dialed in correctly, but since I'm going to change the strings on here, and I'll talk about that next, with the exploration into here, I'm just going to cut these strings off and put on new strings. Since I'm going to change them, I didn't want to get too much into adjusting everything. I'm going to adjust it when it has the right strings on it, and then I can get the action just right for those strings. Now let's talk about the strings it came with. They are 10s, maybe 11s. I don't know. They feel really thick to me. That's part of the problem of judging this guitar, is that the strings are so bad. But I'm going to put on NYXL D'Addario strings, and I'll be able to assess it at that point. But I think that also affects the sound into the pickups when you have not so good strings. Now moving into the neck, which is really a huge selling point for this guitar, I think. It's amazing. The ball end stainless steel frets on this thing are so smooth. No problem there. They even did nice touches like rounding over the edges of the bone nut nicely, so there's not any rigid edges there. Now I used the fret rocker on it, and I did find about 3 or 4 spots where it wasn't exactly flat. It wasn't extreme at those spots, but I did find some spots. I don't know how much of a problem that is. We'll see after I get it set up, but it's not buzzing in any way that is unacceptable to me at the current moment. I just need to get it set up before I could really say. The idea that it has a bone nut, which is very rigid, is outstanding, because that means tuning stability should be very stable. However, I have not found this to be stable so far. That could be a lot of things, so I'm not going to judge it with these strings on it. But I think I know exactly what it is. It is these two string trees. And if you look at the string trees, what you'll notice, and I'm hoping I can capture this, what you'll notice is they actually push the strings outward on this one, these two, noticeably. You see that? And they also do the same thing here, slightly less maybe. But with that kind of stuff going on, I don't think we're going to have anything close to tuning stability. I don't like string trees at all, and the weird thing is that you don't need them on this guitar, which is why I'm just going to simply take them off. These locking tuners are staggered tuners. If you look at them carefully, you can see that these two are lower than these 4. Usually it's 3 and 3. When you get Gotoh, you'll have 3 lower and then 3 a little bit higher. And that is to lower the angle, is to increase the angle to the tuning key from the nut, which means you don't need a string tree to hold the string in, because the idea of a string tree is that you're not allowing the string to pop out of the slot here. You have enough tension on it. So I'm going to take both of these out, and I believe it will improve in tuning stability almost instantly, especially with new strings, because who knows what those strings are doing. Okay, let's look a little farther into the tuning keys, but before we do, I know it's upside down, but you can see the logo. I actually like it because it has even though it's an F, it looks like a J, so it's like J for Jedi Jingle Maker. So I really like it, and I really like the look of these tuners. I also really like the feel of these tuners. They feel like high-end to me, and I put well, Gotoh tuners on every guitar, like that one and many others. And these feel just like that. They feel totally solid. There's no give in them. They're very, very solid. So I will not be replacing these locking tuners. I'll tell you that right now. Can't believe that. Can't believe it. They came great out of the box. Now you can see the wheels on them. I actually prefer this to the Gotoh style, which is smaller. Very, very cool looking, very easy functioning locking tuners. And you can see also that it has a serial number, which I was surprised by, that they're putting serial numbers on them. So this neck is made out of what they call roasted Canada maple, which I assume is hard rock maple from Canada. Interesting thing about this is that it's actually got a little bit of flaming in it. There's a couple spots where there are flame ripples in it. They had another model that had a flame neck that I would buy if it was still up, but it had a mahogany body, and I didn't want to buy two of them until I found out they were at least decent. Now I'm having regret of not pulling the trigger on that one, but flaming, nice flaming. So who knows, these pieces of maple that they have may have flaming all throughout them, and that's kind of a thing that you get, who knows, but I'm kind of stoked about that. It looks like a beautiful neck, and it feels very, very smooth. Like the feel of the neck is a lot like the Nick Johnston or the Ibanez's. I mean, it's a more modern C, maybe I would call it, modern C type of feel. But enough there that it's got something to hang on to, but not so much that it slows you down. So I am very pleased with the look, the feel, the playability of the neck. Very, very comfortable. Now, originally it came with a little like sticker that said made in China. Scraped that off, and also got off all the glue that was there, because you don't want any stickiness on your neck. That's a bad idea to have stickers on your neck. And then there's this thing, and I'm not sure if I should remove it or not. I suppose I should. I just don't like the idea of having decals on a guitar. All in all, though, the headstock is, in my opinion, really cool. I like the shape of the headstock. That's my opinion of it, but that's a personal choice kind of thing. For me, I think it's cool. I mean, okay, now one other thing I want to cover here is the fact that this has a spoke wheel truss rod adjuster. And what that means is that adjusting your truss rod is incredibly easy. And it's something that everybody who plays guitar should learn how to do, but you just simply stick the this tool in here. It's just like a straight piece of metal, and turn this in order to give it relief or add tension. And I've done that a bit already, and it worked very well. And I'm going to continue to do it as this guitar acclimates to my zone here. It's come all the way from China, so who knows, and then it was in California, and now it's here, so it's gone on a great journey. It'll take a little while before I think everything just kind of sets in, but I'll be tweaking the truss rod to flatten and bow the neck using this cool StewMac straight rod tool that I recently purchased. That, and by the way, not sponsored by StewMac, but it lets you gauge the straightness of the neck and set it perfectly. So that's a good tool to have, I suppose, if you're into this kind of stuff. Okay, let's open up the cavity and see what we find in there after we cut the strings off. Now, one other thing I want to point out before I move on is that they wrapped the locking tuners multiple times with these strings, and that screws up the tuning too on these with the tremolo system. The whole idea is to have locking, so when you wrap it, you give play, and when it sets back down, it isn't necessarily the same length. So that's something that also affects the tuning stability that I didn't notice until now that I'm taking them off. But yeah, we won't do that. We'll put them on correctly as the next set goes on. Okay, let's take off these string trees. Now I will just be throwing these away. Nice neat hole. Not too bad. I could easily seal that up. Not sure if I will. I'm not going to do it now. Oh, that already looks better. Okay, now that I have the strings off, I can evaluate some things that were hard to evaluate when I had them on. One is this bone nut, and it's interesting to note that there are little, almost little flakes that come off of it, which are characteristics of a bone nut. So it looks like it is a bone nut. And one of the little tricks you can do is keep the cut strings and use them as a little bit of a file to just file out this, make sure if there's any burrs or anything they can be knocked off, just to increase the possibility of this just increases the ease at which that string can pass through. You don't want to overdo that either. You don't want to change the height. You can see there's hardly anything that I'm doing there, but just enough to take off anything you might not want there. Of course, a little too big for those. Now these don't have much friction on them, but at least they would hit anything that might be on the edge there and knock it off. So that gives me pretty good assurance it's going to work. And before I put the other strings back on, what I'll also do is I'll put a little graphite in here to lubricate this nut, and I'll have done everything that I need to deal with this part of the tuning stability. Now, another thing that you need to check when you take off the strings, of course, is the tightness of these nuts. Just make sure they're tight. You don't want to go with these with pliers. You also don't want to over tighten them. I tend to use this little tool just because it's been easy. Yeah, so they're at the right tight. That one's at the right tightness. Again, that's at the right tightness, just so they're snug. You don't want any play in their tight. Interesting to note that I went through and checked all of them, and they were all pretty much at exactly the right tightness. I wonder if they use some kind of torque wrench to make their tight connections here, because there was tight connections in the neck and really tight connections here. Not too tight, but I mean exactly right throughout the entire thing. Okay, let's clean up the neck, see how dirty it is. I use this stuff. There's lots of different ones you can use. This one, I'll leave a link to this in the description. This one comes with a fret polishing thing, but I just put a little on each. Some people say it lubricates the neck. I don't know if it does, but it definitely cleans it. This is as much a cleaner as anything else. And I'll show you how I do this. It's not that it's that exact a process, really. And usually if I just rub it on there for a little while. See, oh, that's not that dirty. Wow. Not bad. You always hear about how dirty the guitars are when they come from the manufacturer, but there's a little bit of dirt on it, but it's nothing compared to what I've experienced on some of my other guitars. It's actually quite clean. Very interesting. And this stuff, I think, makes the fretboard a little bit more slippery, which is good for bends and so on. Wow, that neck wasn't very dirty at all. Really brought out the grain of the wood by putting this stuff on it. Put a fair amount on. It does definitely make the wood pop out more. This has got a really nice finish on this neck. I'm very impressed by this neck. They say this is rosewood. I believe them. That is a really nice smooth neck. Okay, now the other thing that I put on here is a fret polish cream. Again, I'll put a link. But they have tools that you can put on here to prevent it from getting on the fretboard, but in my opinion, it doesn't much matter if it gets on the fretboard. It's going to get on the fretboard no matter what you do. You just want to get some in the vicinity so that you can get it in a paper towel and rub it in. And then I'll come back and hit it one more time with that other cleaning oil afterwards. Okay, this will shine these frets up and also remove any like tarnishing that's on them. Okay, let's take off the back cavity plate. Oh wow, that is incredibly clean. Get a load of that. Look at that. Very nice routing. And the finish goes throughout. So they finish the inside of the cavity as well. That is really cool. Oh, I'm definitely leaving this off. I don't want to cover up any of this. You can see that the ground connection is nice and solid there. Well done. Interesting. This claw is a little bit crooked if you notice. It's kind of tilted off that way a bit. I can easily affix that. Wow, not bad. Nice big block too. Very clean routing everywhere you look. This is going to be so easy to shield if the other side is anything like this. Well, while I'm at it, I think I'm going to measure the distance between these and get them to the same spot. Let's see. Yeah, so definitely after measuring it, I can tell that this one's just a little bit longer. So I'll get these even at least so it's set correctly. That may help a bit. And I noticed that the bridge was tilting a little bit down towards the body, so I'm actually going to tighten them both up, but I'll set them to a precise distance with this. Nice solid connection points there, well drilled holes. This all looks very good. I think I will replace these springs, but they look like they're doing just fine. there are springs you can get that they say they transmit the tone. You know what? I changed my mind. With this ground cable here, I don't want to risk this getting caught on something, so I am going to put this back on. Okay, now that we've looked in the back, let's look in the front. And I'm noticing that these connection points are still very, very tight. Might have something to do with the density of the wood. Okay, the moment of truth. Nope. Not yet. Okay, it's underneath the front of the neck. That's interesting. The pickguard actually goes underneath the neck. Pretty decent distance too. No problem, that's not necessarily an issue. Still a little bit of that. Oh, the pickguard plastic is still on. Suppose I want to get that out of this area. I can take the rest off later, but at least I won't have to remove it from underneath the pickguard. Okay. Oh, wow. That is clean. Look at those cuts. Somewhat surprising. There's a little bit of wood left over, but hardly anything. And it's routed for 2 humbuckers. So you could actually modify this to have 2 humbuckers. Very cool. You can see the grain of the wood throughout. That's just nice. I'm going to actually dump out some of this sawdust that's in there still. Onto the work mat, but you'll also notice that it is completely unshielded. So now I want to decide if I want to take this opportunity to shield it, which means I would also have to ground a wire to the shielding. Do I want to get into that right now? Okay, so I decided to shield this thing while I'm at it, and that's a pretty easy process. Just takes a little time, and you have to just take your time. But I use this copper tape. It's actually conductive on both sides, both the sticky side and the shiny side, which is very important. That's the stuff you want to get. Stuff that I use, I got off of Amazon. I'll put a link in the description, but that's the brand. And it's a very delicate tape, so you want to be careful as you use it, not to have it fold over on itself, etc. One of the things I like to do though before I put it in is to just use a screwdriver. And in this case, the cuts are so clean that I can easily use a screwdriver to just get away those little wispy pieces of sawdust. There's hardly any. You're not worried about marring up the finish at all because you're just going to take it off. You're just going to cover it with sticky tape anyhow. Oh, this is clean. There's no significant ridges in this routing work. Very nice. Gives a nice flat surface for that tape to adhere to. Avoid a lot of issues. Now look at this. You could put a kill switch in this guitar. They have this carved out, and there's actually an access hole for a wire drilled into it also. So I don't know if they plan to have a model that has a kill switch in it. I bet you they do. And they routed this so that they could do that easily in the future. Another thing to note is one of the screws actually came through the body there. That's of no consequence whatsoever, but I would mention that. That will work. Let's go to town. Okay, so that was quite the detour into shielding a guitar land, but I am quite glad I did it. Now the guitar is set up to have as much protection from interference as possible. It's not going to eliminate it, but it will reduce it. I ended up shielding the entire cavity, and I put in a ground cable from the volume pot to the shielding itself to make sure it's all connected together and it actually works. But look at these electronics. They are really nice. Full-size pots, nice large switch. The pickups actually look quality from what I can tell. They say they're Alnico 5. I know they're a little microphonic. Everybody always talks about that, but that won't bother me much, especially not on clean settings. But I'm going to replace them, and that looks like a very easy setup. They've got the cloth wiring on those pickups, which makes it easy to see where each wire is coming from. Really cool. All right, I'm gonna put it back together, put some new strings on it, get it set up,